Welcome back to codingcat.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Here is Alex Patterson and Brittney Postma. This episode brought to you by Storyblok. Build anything and publish everywhere.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Coding Cat Dev podcast. I am Brittney Postma, and unfortunately, Alex is not here with us today, but I am joined by the lovely Matthew Phillips. Thank you so much for being here, Matthew.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'll be your co-host today.
Yes, I love having somebody to talk to to play off of. I don't know, these solo streams, if you ever try to do solo streaming, I can't anymore. I don't know. My nerves I get too flustered and distracted by things. But let's find out a little more about you. And I know today we're going to be talking about Astro 2.0. But before we dive straight into that, let's find out how you came to be involved with Astro.
Okay. Always these kinds of questions are always difficult. It's like, what do I start off with? I was born in a small town. All right. So I guess probably web dev. How did I get involved in web dev and kind of tooling? I've been involved, I would say, the last 10 years or so in front end tooling. Come from Louisville, Kentucky, very enterprisey sort of tech scene. So not a lot of web dev, not a lot of fun stuff. So doing a lot of that on the side for fun.
I thought I caught the accent in there. I'm from Georgia,
yes,
so I caught a little bit.
Oh, I can hear yours too a little bit. Yeah, it's for me it's the I, ice. I think that did okay there, but normally it would I'll drag that one out
a little bit.
Yeah, yep. I know, and I think I'm pretty good for most Kentuckians. It's okay, but when I'm around people who are not from here, it definitely comes out.
Exactly. I've lived away for a while, and I'm hoping that I'm kind of losing it a little bit.
I didn't until you said something. I didn't know, so you're good. Anyway, so I guess I kind of came into web kind of late jQuery era, when jQuery was still very popular. Eventually, I wound up working for this company called Batovi, and they built a lot of JavaScript tooling and stuff. They had this framework called CanJS, which was popular. It's most popular around kind of Backbone era. So I worked on that in open source for several years. So I got a lot of experience just working kind of in this ecosystem that I'm still at today. Eventually, I wound up with, before Astro, Fred, who's the founder of Astro, he started a company called Skypack, which was a CDN, still is out there. So what Skypack does is it allows you to load npm modules in the browser. Essentially, you get a URL for React instead of having to use a bundler. I was hired. I knew Fred a little bit from just from the industry, and he was hiring, and I applied, and I was I had done some module stuff in the past. I'd worked on some open source module projects, so I had pretty good experience with that. So it just felt like a good fit. I was looking for kind of a little bit of a change in career, and we worked on that, and it was probably only I don't know, 4 or 5 months later that we started working on Astro.
So all the way back in the Skypack days, and that was before Snowpack, right?
I believe the timeline is Snowpack was before Skypack.
Oh, okay. So Snowpack and then Skypack and then Astro.
Yeah, it was kind of I might be getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure Fred started with Pika, which was kind of it was something that as a library author you might use, which kind of builds your packages to work on the web, but also to work it was kind of a bundling tool a little bit. He started with that, and he had a few different little projects he worked on. And I think Snowpack was, for those who don't know, was a lot like Veed is now. If you're familiar with Veed, it was pretty much a predecessor to that. In a lot of ways, it is a dev server to allow you to use npm packages. And then Skypack came around. I don't know. I should probably ask him, but I think it came a little bit after.
And that was ES modules, basically getting the URL for the browser, the package, rather than having to download through Node.
Yeah, and SkyPack uses Snowpack like in the back end. So that's why I say I'm pretty sure it came before.
Yeah,
Because
you're
it actually
probably
uses,
right. I'm just getting my
um,
timelines mixed up, so no worries. You have more experience than me.
yeah. So yeah, like I said, I think it was probably like 4 months later. Um, we had this problem with SkyPack. Well, there was a couple things. SkyPack, you could use the modules in the browser, but if you actually wanted to ship that to like a production application, that was a little tricky to do. So we had these things called they were like a pinned URL. You could think of it as like a frozen URL.
Okay.
Essentially, it's a URL that is guaranteed. It's like it was cached in Cloudflare, never would change. It should be very fast. Whereas when if you just use kind of our regular SkyPack URLs, there was a lot of stuff that happened in development. Like you'd have to like, figure out, you want React. Well, let me figure out what the newest version of React is and make sure I pull that. Anyways, so kind of what we were doing is we're trying to figure out a way to kind of get it so that people could use SkyPack in production. And then there was another problem that was happening at the time where browsers were changing how they handled CDNs. So one of the big advantages to a shared CDN that used to be is that the idea was, okay, you have this URL to jQuery, like back in the day. Everyone is using jQuery, so we can just, the browser is already gonna have jQuery cached, right? That was kind of the idea. It should be faster, but browsers change that, and I might be getting the exact details of this wrong, but I believe what they did is they made it so that a URL is only cached per domain. So that means you no longer had a shared cache. So that advantage of using CDNs, shared CDNs, kind of went away. So we were like trying to think, well, what can we do with SkyPack that's going to make it easier for people to use? And one of our ideas was, well, SkyPack is really this optimization tool. So what if we knew about a user's application itself? We could actually optimize their application. And we're like, well, we have this whole user base of Snowpack users, and like we know a lot about how their stuff works. We bundle it. So what if we got Snowpack users like use us as a host? That was, this is just one idea. So like we could be a static host, but a static host that like knows about your source code, so it can do cool stuff like, for example, let's say you're using Google Fonts. Well, Google Fonts is hosted on another domain. There's like this whole pre-connect thing you got to do, which is kind of weird. Like we could actually optimize that, for you. We could like pull it locally, have it cached on a really fast CDN, that sort of thing. So anyways, that was kind of one of the ideas that we are floating around. And I think he's never said this explicitly, but I think Fred always had the idea to do a static site generator kind of in the back of his head. When they built the Snowpack website, they used 11D, and that was very, very fast. But I think there were some things that he had trouble with it. Particularly, it was hard to like use Snowpack and 11D together. Was one of the things he struggled with. And so I think he always had it in the back of his mind to build a static site generator. But we didn't actually, when we started working on the project that became Astro, we didn't say we're building a static site generator. We were doing this kind of weird hosting thing that eventually we're like, oh, hey, there's also this thing called partial hydration, which we should explain that here in a second. But
yeah,
I'm probably throwing out all kinds of like very technical stuff that maybe some people don't understand. But anyways, there was this idea. We were like, we want to play around with this. Oh, what if we knew about components? What if you had components in your HTML? We could do cool stuff with that, right? And so, long story short, that became Astro. And eventually, we were like, hey, we could just build static sites with this, and that's kind of what happened.
It kind of like came out just trying to optimize all of these things that we do as developers and trying to figure out how best to do that. And so the answer was just create your own framework that can do all of that for you, which is great.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting because, one of the things that people like about Astro is that Astro, you can use any framework you like with it, right? Like we're not opinionated about what framework you use. And that came from exactly that. It's like, we were like, well, we have these Snowpack users. They use all sorts of things. So we can't say, oh, you have to use this particular DOM library, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like, really like, yeah, we don't know exactly about what you're doing. We know some things, but we're not so opinionated. We don't want to be. So yeah.
So initially getting started with Astro, what would you say was kind of the high level mindset of what the goal was with Astro?
When we released Astro?
Yeah, so I know it's changed a little bit over time.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the biggest goal that we had is there was these two different worlds of the way people built static sites where some people really, people really love components and people were using tools like Gatsby, which is a tool to allow you to use React components to build static websites. And then some people use like 11D, and those were like very different mind frames, I'd say. 11D gave you like complete control over every piece of HTML that gets rendered, and because of that, it is very efficient. It creates very efficient websites. Gatsby, I'm going to pick on Gatsby, but tools like that are it's to some people more user friendly.
Especially after the news yesterday, right?
Oh yeah.
Was that a little surprising?
Yeah, I'm not trying to pick on Gatsby's gotten a lot better in a lot of ways. But one problem it had at the time, and I shouldn't just say that, but other tools as well, is that because they come from like this front end world, all this JavaScript comes with it, and it's for the most part not really JavaScript you use. Like you build I don't know, like you have this sidebar widget or something, and it's like it's not interactive at all. It's just like a list of your navigation for your website, right?
Yeah.
But because of the technology you chose to use, now you have to load all this JavaScript on the front end as well. So we never liked that, and that's one of the reasons why we use things like 11D, because you have a lot more control over that. So yeah, we wanted to kind of meld those two worlds, like kind of the nice developer experience of using components and being able to use your framework of choice with kind of like the most efficient output possible of just like
you were around
HTML.
for that initial release, so
yeah.
Saying as a framework too that I'm going to support everything under the sun, like React, Vue, Svelte, all of these frameworks, that had to be difficult, right?
I mean, it was a little difficult, but it was also like, I mean, we were always going to do that. There wasn't
a core fundamental like need for the framework to have that.
Yeah, it was just like we're not going to pick a framework or we're not going to build our own. Like that's just way too much work. Like we want to stay out of that decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Stay out of the front end altogether, I guess, was another thing. Is that one thing that is a little bit different about Astro versus a lot of alternatives is that it doesn't really do much on the front end. Like it mostly is a back end framework that allows you to like use components that you want on the front end. But once you're using a component, a framework component, like a Vue component, like you're in Vue world at that point. Like we don't have anything, we don't have any control over that.
At that point, kind of the SPA functionality of the framework takes over, or what? How does that
exactly
work? Okay.
Yeah, so we have these things called islands. And tell me if we should start showing like some code at any point. We can do that because that can kind of show it off. But
yeah, let's do that.
Do it that way. Okay. That. Yeah, I was gonna say we're getting into some technical enough stuff that
more technical.
Yeah, it's like just me like saying words is not really gonna answer a lot of
All
questions.
Right, are you ready for me to share your screen?
Yeah. I'm sure I need to bump up the font even more.
I need to make my screen bigger too.
Let's see.
Things. That's pretty good. I can see that.
I'm going a little bit higher. Okay. All right. So to create an Astro project, you do npm init. Let's see if I get this right. Yeah. Astro at latest, and then I'm going to use a template. So I think this is going to work.
And while these node modules are installing too, I'm going to do our ad break. So once you get that going, I think Perfect. I'll go ahead and do our ad break and we'll come back and show off the demo.
Okay, yep.
All right, if I can find it.
How in the world could I forget about this?
There's no need to freak out. We have Storyblok.
Robert, you're right.
But we still need a plan.
Okay, how much time do we have left until the launch?
24 hours.
Okay, let's go.
we are ready to publish.
So let's get this baby online.
Thank you so much, Storyblok. I love when the music plays. I'm always like in the background, like bouncing. It's good.
Was that Storyblok?
Storyblok, yeah.
Yeah, they're one of our I don't call it sponsor, one of our partners.
Like partners, yeah. Awesome timing.
Love Storyblok. Okay, so yeah, where were we going to get into? Okay, so this is an Astro project. I ran npm init Astro at latest, passed in a template, and that told it that I want to use the blog template. This is a very typical setup.
So it's an Astro template that is you can grab off of their site and.
Yes, if you just run this command, we can share that
blog template pretty quickly.
Yeah, it sends up, in the time it took for that ad to go. And this is what the website looks like. Can you see my browser tab?
Yes.
Got the blog section, got about section, et cetera, et cetera. So what we have here is we have the use of components. So yeah, I guess maybe taking a step back, an Astro project has a source folder. It always has a pages folder as well. This is really the only folder that you need. You can have an Astro project that just has a pages folder and some files and nothing else.
And is that the routing folder? Would it be page-based routing?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with,
I should say.
Familiar with Next.js or 11D, a lot of those, I believe Remix, they work very similarly.
Yeah.
So inside pages, any files you have become routes. So there's a couple formats here. We have a Markdown file. So you can use Markdown as a page, or you can use Astro files, which is our own syntax as well. So
this is one of the things that I love about Astro is that you can use Markdown just out of the box. You don't have to install anything extra with it.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. So with Astro, with an Astro page, you're actually defining the entire HTML structure, which is a little different from a lot of other framework-oriented things where you tend to like focus on the component and then use like layouts to determine what the page is. But in Astro, you can actually have full control over the pages, and layouts are just kind of like a component. What I mean by that is, like, for example, in this Markdown file, like there's a special layout property. And what that does is it tells Astro that for this particular blog post, find this file, which is just right here. And this is the HTML structure. And this thing actually gets in the blog post and it injects it.
And it injects that head section based on the
you got full control. Yes, exactly. You got full control over everything. But let's take a step back from that real quick. In just like a regular Astro page, you can use components, which can be other Astro files, or they could be framework components. For example, here we have like this base head component, and this is just a way that we're using to like add some common meta tags and the title stuff that would go in your head. By doing it this way, we can reuse this in like other pages or other layout components.
Could you do that with the doc type too? Could you include the doc type in the component and then pull in just the component?
Yes, you can do that. So that's kind of what's happening in this layout. This layout is actually just the component. It's missing the doc type. So yeah, the Astro pages are not really any different from Astro components. Like you can kind of compose things however you want.
Okay.
So yeah, this thing could actually pull in a layout. I wouldn't want to pull in this one, but it could pull in a layout and like use that and like have your actual HTML structure there.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have to type that on every single page. That's kind of what I was wondering, is if that was a requirement or not.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. Is they'll do something like this. They'll say layout, and then we have these things called slots.
Yep, which is very familiar in the Svelte world.
Yeah, so you might do slot equals head or something like that. And then layout is gonna basically decide where to inject this inside. Probably head is not the right thing to do here. But actually we have something called a fragment, which is just kind of
Svelte does it with slot and then name equals head. So I don't know if that's.
Yeah. No, well, that's I'm not super familiar with Svelte, but Astro used the slot element to inject the thing. So like inside the layout, like for example here, it's using because it wants to put its slot there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And this could be a name as well. This could be like name equals body.
And then that gives the slot a name. And
Yeah.
that tells the component where to inject the information, the data.
Right. Well, this is the component it's saying, I want my slot to go here. On kind of the consuming side, you use the slot attribute to tell it this is the head slot. We're basically like passing a property into the layout component. Essentially what's happening.
Gotcha.
So anyways, yeah, that's a very common way to do layouts. But anyways, yeah, so you have components here, like we have a header component. This is an Astro component. This could be a JSX component or like a React component or a Svelte component.
What makes the .astro file extension different? What does the .astro do rather than an HTML file extension?
Rather than HTML, well, the difference between Astro and HTML is the ability to like have this, what we call it, this front matter section. So everything in between these slashes is JavaScript, TypeScript, so you can, do whatever you need here. You can run JavaScript and use that information kind of inside of your template.
Okay.
So we have a title, we can pass the title around, that sort of thing. And what makes Astro different from like framework components, an Astro component is, number one, it just renders HTML, it doesn't run in the client. And number two, you can create what we call islands, which is a way to render some component in the client. So like, let's say we had a counter component. We don't actually have one, so this is gonna get
We all hear a lot about islands architecture, so I'm glad you're diving into that.
Okay, it's gonna get some red squigglies. Maybe I can actually write one if we have time. But essentially, what you do is any component that you import, any non-Astro component, I should say, you can add this client colon. And what that does is it tells Astro that this component needs to run in the client. And Astro will actually like go through the process of loading that for you, so you don't have to load it yourself, and then injecting it. It adds itself as like a placeholder in the page, and then injects itself kind of in that placeholder. So just bring this up. You can see where there's different types of client. We call these directives. Basically a way to tell Astro how you want the component to load. So we have like load says, I want this component to load like on page load. You can also say idle, and what that will do is it uses this API that will wait until like the CPU is not busy. So like, for example, if you have like, if you were rendering a list of 100 components, and that might be a lot of work. And so idle is a way to say like, hey, this component needs to run like quickly, but it's kind of slightly lower priority. So if there's other things, you have a bunch of things using client load, those things will go first, idle will go after.
Gotcha.
We also have visible. And what this does is, let's just use this one. If you were to put this like down here at the bottom of the page, what that would do is that this wouldn't actually load the counter until the user scrolled down to there.
Does that use like intersection observer or?
Yeah, uses that. So yeah, that's useful for, if you have a site with like, oh, you have a header and that header has like some drop down and stuff like that. That's stuff that's the first thing your user is going to see. So you want to load that stuff quickly, but maybe you have something further down the page that's like a tabs widget or something like that. The user doesn't need doesn't need to load that right away. So anyways, these are all ways to prioritize how you load things. We also have a client only. What that will do is it will only load it in the client. It won't actually render it server side. And we have a media as well, which that allows you to pass in a media query. So you could say, I don't even remember my media queries right now. But you
that's not for images. I was thinking for images, but that's a media query.
No, yeah, media query. So yeah, you say like min width is greater than 168 pixels or something like that.
Then it's going to load it.
Yeah, it's only going to load it. Yeah, so use case for this one, I've used this a few times, is if you ever develop like a responsive website where you might have like a slide-in menu on the mobile view. Well, that slide-in menu is only really for mobile, so there's no reason to ever load that in like desktop.
That's really nice, actually.
Yes, yeah. So it allows you to do that kind of thing. You want to have some stuff that just never loads in some context.
And we're talking a little bit here about like server and client and where things are loading. So let's talk rendering for a minute, because I know Astro originally launched as a static site generator. Yep. And then these things would load on the client and run JavaScript in the browser, right? So in Astro 2.0 now, are we able to do like this server-side rendering? Is there hybrid rendering? Can we talk about the differences a little bit in those?
Oh yeah, I like where you're going with this. Yes, you can do server rendering. So maybe let's actually do that. So yeah, we've had server rendering for a little while. Server rendering was
maybe before 2.0. Yeah, that might have been a 1.0 thing.
Yeah. So let's just look at an Astro config. Astro config is very simple. This is just the one that came with. This is adding an MDX integration that allows you to like have MDX pages. It's also adding a sitemap integration. What that do is it'll generate a sitemap.xml file. This is all just came with the template, by the way. You can add as many integrations as you want.
I have a question. If you start an Astro project without that blog template, does MDX come out of the box with it, or is that something you have to add?
No, you do have to add MDX. Yeah, our MDX support is still like pre 1.0. We haven't. We've had some issues with scaling in particular. So we're not ready to call that 1.0. Gotcha. Still TBD on whether that will be built in or not. But yeah, Markdown comes by default. Astro comes by default, but any other formats you usually have to install.
Be added on top.
Yeah.
Got it.
So if there's this output property in the config, and you can set that to server, that basically enables server rendering. And a big thing we were shooting for when we developed this is that we wanted the experience of using Astro, of developing an Astro website, to feel the same, no matter whether you're building to static or server, for the most part. And we really wanted to, we thought like a normal flow is like, hey, I'm starting off building a website. I'm just going to use SSG mode. And then maybe down the line, I find out, oh, actually, I need to run this page. I have like all these pages that need to be run in the server side because they need to access a database in order to generate some, HTML based off of state. Now all I need to do is go in and change this from static to server, and now I have a SSR website. But your experience of like developing the site doesn't change at all. Like everything works the same. So just by doing that, like I said, nothing's going to change here. But what will change is when I do a build, it's going to build. Oh no, what did I do? Oh yeah, this is an error message. Good error message. Okay, great. Let's just see if we get that in dev.
Without an adapter, this is all coming back. Like this feels so familiar with Svelte. They did a lot of things very similar to the Svelte API, so we use adapters.
Yeah, we were inspired by Svelte for a lot of things, for sure. Anytime it's because I work on Astro, anytime I see an error message, I'm like, oh no, I just discovered a bug. Like I just assume it's a bug. It's not in this case.
It's not.
Okay, so we can add an adapter. Yeah. If we do Astro, npx Astro add, we can add an adapter. So I'm going to add AstroJS/Netlify. We have a very, very slick process here. It's going to go through, install everything. It asks us, it's like, hey, we're going to update your file. I'm going to say yes. And
it updates the file for you too. That is slick.
It does, but it did not.
It
It didn't work. It didn't work here. I don't know why that is. It usually does. Maybe it's because I had the file open.
I'll give it credit for that.
At least it said it was going to. That's something, right? Okay, yeah. Netlify. I think I want to do.
You have to.
No, well, no. Actually, I don't think I do. Actually, I'm the person who wrote the Netlify adapter, but I don't remember how to use it. So I'm going to look. Actually, I'm going to look at the documentation. Let's do that.
That's a good place to start.
That's a good place. I know that's not my natural inclination, but yes.
Mine either.
We have great docs, so I should do it more often. But as you can see, it tells you exactly what you want to do. So I want to deploy this to Netlify functions.
And so that will allow you to use serverless functions for any server endpoint, and then you can use Edge if you the.
Yeah, all you gotta do is switch this to Edge.
It was very similar to Svelte for that.
Okay, good to know.
There's just like an extra config in the adapter, but.
Yeah, so now we have a build. Hey, it worked.
Yay!
We have a Netlify folder. It's got some files in here that you don't really need to worry about, but it's got all your posts essentially ready to go for you, compiled down.
And a question I always have too with that Netlify folder, is that something you check in to get? That's generated on build, right? So you probably don't need to check that in, right?
I assume not. I'm not an expert on that thing, but that would be my inclination as well. Okay. I know that sometimes, I don't know if Netlify does. I know some host will like have JSON files that they output, but I think usually the fact that it's a dot folder tells me, hey, don't check this in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thought. So yeah, now you have a server rendered site. I might be able to preview this. I don't know if we have support for this. Let me just try. We don't. Yeah. So we added the ability recently to an adapter can allow you to. There's this like preview command we have that will allow you to like preview the final build like using Netlify in this case. So I think that is something you can do with the Netlify.
So you have the Netlify CLI. I was going to say you can do it with that.
Do you know how?
Netlify build, and then I think it's Netlify preview.
Oh no. Yeah, I think is it like Netlify?
Dash CLI is the CLI, yeah. And then you should be able to run Netlify space build and then Netlify space preview.
Yeah. All right, let's try this. Of course, I'm gonna get hung in npm install for a while. Okay.
I used to work at Netlify.
Yeah, I know.
Oh no, you don't have to do the dash CLI on the actual command. You should be able to run now just Netlify space build. Or NTL is short for Netlify too.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. That did work. Awesome. Yeah, you're going to get some output, I think, here that you can safely ignore. Let's see preview. Let's see if that does it. No, I did not mean dev.
Preview is not a Netlify command.
Maybe it is dev. Let's try dev.
Dev will run the local, and it does give you a port to share that too. So I think that would.
Is this running the source code though? Yes, it is. Yeah, this is just running this is just running Astro.
That's how you do local development, but there is a way to do a live preview.
Yeah. If I were to install the Node.js adapter, I know that supports preview. We could look at it that way, but that's not. That's
an aside.
Yeah. So let's do this instead. We have a build, like we can deploy this to Netlify and get a site very quickly. But instead, I'm not going to do that. Another thing you can do is you can mark certain pages to be pre-rendered, which is a new feature in 2.0. So I'm just going to create a new Astro file. I'm going to say page 2, exclamation mark. And then just to do a little bit of stuff. Try to be a good citizen and have all the right tags. I'm going to set my language as English. Okay, so now I have a second page. Now, if I do a build now, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to have this Netlify folder, a lot of files that I don't really know what they're doing, but they're doing stuff. So actually, some of that might come from the dev command. Let me just remove that.
Well, you have the server option, so all of those are being generated. Each endpoint, each file is being generated as a serverless function in that Netlify folder.
Right. Yeah.
And so you were going into like the pre-rendering, and I think if we pre-rendered that, then we shouldn't get a serverless function for them. It should just statically generate the page.
Right. So yeah, if we do SSG, you won't get this. But you also can now in 2.0, as you can say, export const pre-render equals true. And what that will do is just for this particular page, it will pre-render it. All right, let's see how this works. Okay, so as you can see in the output, it generated 2.html. So now if we go into our disk folder, we have 2/index.html. So we've
just the static page rather than like those.
Yeah, and then if we look at this, hopefully this did correctly. Yeah, it told us that the to route is going to route to the HTML page, whereas all these other routes are going to go to this function that we generated.
Yep.
So yeah, you get this pre-rendered experience. So if you have, a common use case is like, you have a dynamic website, you need SSR, but you have certain pages, maybe your landing page for like non-logged in users, you want to have a really fast experience there. It's basically your marketing page. Like you might mark that as pre-render. Pages that people visit not too frequently, you can mark as pre-render. It just kind of allows your actual website that's running to handle like the important requests. The requests actually do need dynamic data.
And that's a new feature from 2.0, right?
Yes, yeah. Pre-rendering is brand new. So yeah, all you have to do is like mark it in your Astro file, and you're able to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. That I mean, it makes Astro a little more competitive with all of the other frameworks out there too. Where I think that was the one key piece that was kind of missing from Astro's puzzle, and now it's available. Yeah.
Let me see. I don't think it works in Markdown. I'm gonna try it. I'm not afraid to try things that might not work. That would be cool if it did.
We like to break things live.
I think pre-rendering right now. Pre-rendering support is only for Astro pages, which we'll get into content collections here in a minute. Is kind of the way we're moving. Is that most of your Markdown content is not going to be as its own top level quote unquote page.
Yeah.
But instead something that you consume and you bring in, and because of that, those will always be in Astro files, and you can pre-render those. So you still can actually pre-render Markdown content, but just not if it's a top level page.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious how you would do that if you do like an Astro, not at the top level page.
Okay. Yeah, we can dive into that. All right, so let's see the best way to approach this. Yeah, so I guess let's talk about content collections. Does that sound good? Yeah, so for example, here we have this about page, this about.md is a markdown file. It has a layout, it has a title, it has a description. If we use that, let's kind of show the problem that one of the problems that exists with markdown pages and kind of how content collections seeks to solve that. So if we go back here, wrong port. Okay. Yeah, this is my about page. So this is a markdown file.
Okay.
And so if we look at what's happening here is that it uses this blog post layout, right? So this blog post layout is gets like all of the front matter items on the thing, on the markdown, the title, description, updated date, those all get passed as properties to Astro.
Okay.
The way you access properties in Astro components is there's this astro.props, and that's going to have an object with all the properties that was passed in. And so here we have the title, description, publication date, updated date, etc. And we're just
That's
using
what
that.
dictates what each blog post should have.
Yeah, exactly.
And
then we're using that inside of our template. So, for example, here's the title that's going there. Now, something you might do by mistake is you might, oops, I forgot to omit the title. So what's going to happen there is that, am I on the right page, or is the title not being used? Blog post about. Do we have a title? No, we don't have a title. I guess the title is not actually used. Let me fix that so it's a little bit. Oh yeah, there is the H1 title. Yeah, I just can't see it. So, of course. So anyways.
Yeah, you removed the title in the front matter, so it doesn't exist now.
It doesn't exist now, exactly. So that's something that you might do by mistake. Just you don't know what you're supposed to do.
And you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know. And so one thing content collection does is it allows you to define a schema for like a collection of content, markdown files, MDX files to start. And so what we have here in this blog index, let me just go back here, that's this page, we have a list of blog posts, right? And the way to do that is that we have this get collection call. Let me just make this a little bit prettier. Okay, so we're saying we want to get the blog collection. And so what that does is Astro has this special folder called content inside source. And inside of that, there's a config file that you write. And so inside this config file, you get you can define a schema for your page or for this particular content. So in this case, we're saying it has a title, it has a description, has a publication date, updated date, hero image. And this is using a library called Zod, which is a way to define, define type schemas.
Yeah.
And it will check it. It allows you to do transformations, so that way, you can put a date in your front matter, and that gets converted to an actual date object that you can use in your templates. It allows you to do all that sort of things. Zod's a really, really, really fun library. But by defining the schema, now we have type checking inside of all of our content. So that way, when we go to this blog, let's see what happens here. We actually get an error message. I love these error messages. So these error messages are also new to Astro 2.0. We've redesigned that. You got to have dark mode with every website nowadays, right?
I know, right? And it's like right in the error message. That is, it's a really slick, nice UI, like GUI, to see that the error was there, where before we didn't know what was going on, right? We were lost. We were looking for the title. We couldn't tell what was happening. And now we have a nice, clear error message that the title is required.
Title is required. It's this error, like, it will send you to the documentation. It sends you directly to content collections guide, which steps you through the process of learning how to use it. It's got the post that's missing, so we really try to clean up these error messages. But anyways, the important thing is that title is a required field, so you're never going to make that mistake again. So now you go to it and you're fine. The same thing if you go to the actual page.
Did the server stop?
No, I'm sure I changed something that messed it up. Get collection blog, posts, post.render. Let's see what, wait, this can't be right. I think this is wrong. Let's do some live debugging here real quick.
This happens every single time you live code too. It's just.
It does. Yeah. Oh, so we're not getting past the prop, huh? Wonder if this should be. Now I'm really.
Is it
curious.
because we're still on server rendered mode?
I don't know. Oh, yes, that is exactly it. You're very smart. Yeah, that is exactly it. Wow, you really know Astro. Yes.
I have actually not used Astro in a project yet, but I've seen lots of things and I've wanted to try it out. So this is making me like really want to like dive in and try it more. I think just a little bit of like maybe my Netlify knowledge is coming. Netlify and Svelte maybe.
Yeah. Oh, you wrote a post about Astro, I believe, right? Or some documentation?
I did do a brief oh no, I did not. That was Salma. Salma wrote a post about getting started with Astro.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so appreciate that help. So yeah, I said earlier that we try to make static site mode and SSR mode as close as possible. One way that they are different is that in static mode, we have this special whenever you see this file here that has the ... in it.
A dynamic slug.
Yeah, it's a dynamic route. And so you can think about it that when you're building something, you have this dynamic route. We want to build several pages that all follow this structure. And in static mode, we need to know about those things at build time. Whereas in SSR mode, the user it depends on what your URL is, right? The user types whatever into URL, you look that up in the database, maybe you serve a 404 if it doesn't exist, etc. But in SSG mode, we need to know up front. So anyways, that's why there's this special get static paths. And if people are familiar with next.js, they have the same thing. And what that does is when we see this, Astro will actually call this function, and it's going to go ahead and get all of your posts, and then we're going to create a page for each one of these. Long-winded way of saying that is why it didn't work, is because get static paths is only in SSG mode.
So maybe that's another way we can file an issue now and say that we need to update the error message instead of saying the render function didn't fire or whatever that said, to say are you running in server mode? These dynamic routes don't.
I know. I have a notepad here. I'm going to write that down. No, you're totally right. Or really, Astro, I think maybe what should happen here is Astro should see that there's this get static paths and be like, wait a second, you don't need this in SSR.
Yeah, it might should even warn you there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll let you write that down.
You're yelling at me. Yeah.
The only other thing I have too, I'm wondering, were there any breaking changes? I know 1.0 happened fairly recently too. So 1 and 2 came really close together. Were there breaking changes, and is there an easy migration path, a command, or anything to help with that?
Yes. Are you pressed for time? There's a couple more things we could talk about with content collections, but
okay.
Okay.
We got about 15 minutes. So
okay. Yeah. I can get through this pretty quickly. Really, the reason why I wanted to do this is because one of the whole nice things about content collections is you get these very nice in VS Code gives you very nice overlay. If you look up a post, you can see all the properties.
Yeah, you can get
every post has a data.
Is that the word?
IntelliSense, exactly. Yeah. And then actually, if you go into the schema where you define the schema, if you do a comment here, if you say the date the post was updated, that will show up too. I think, yeah, you see. So anyways, it's a nice way to document what you're doing, and it makes it much easier.
It's like a little JS doc typing. That's how JS doc does the little comments. That's cool.
Yeah. So anyways, you get all that for free. That's a big thing. When you actually call this method, get collections, if you have several collections here, it's going to list all the collections that you have. Each one of those has their own schema. It's going to have the schema just for that particular collection. So it just makes the experience of like working with data so much easier than it was in the past. So we're very much looking forward to this. We're looking forward to like, I don't know, maybe content collections could live in a CMS instead of having them all locally. Maybe you have some in the CMS, and we'd like to do the same sort of thing where you can define a schema for your CMS data. So, anyways, we're thinking about
Yeah,
all that works.
maybe even like an integration with a CMS where it could auto generate your schema locally for you or something along those lines.
Yeah, and then the last thing about content collections is that in I don't know how deep, I don't want to go too deep here, but in the past there was a way to also have markdown files that you would kind of like bring in, and there was this method called astro.glob. And what that did basically is it allowed you to like write a glob for a bunch of files and like get those, and you can do the same sort of thing where you're like creating like a list of posts. You could do the same sort of thing, but it had this issue where any files that you globbed, like you would bring in their styles as well. So if you had like, MDX files, those MDX files imported, some components, all the styles came with that. So even if you were only like listing post, you get all the CSS on your page that you didn't actually need.
Okay.
And content collection fixes that. Is that we designed it in such a way that only if you call this render method, and what this render method does is it creates a component for you, then you use that component, then the styles get added. But if you don't do that, like for example on this page here, we're using a collection, but we're just using it because so that way we can like display the title and the date and stuff. We're not actually rendering the markdown, so you don't get any of that like we call it style bleeding. So anyways, yeah, that is
awesome.
That is the last thing. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can talk about, you want to talk about breaking changes?
Yeah, I wanted to know like what the breaking changes were between 1 and 2 because they happened kind of close together. And then what does the migration path look like? Is there a command or anything that goes along with that?
Yeah, so there were not a lot of breaking changes in 2.0. They're kind of, probably the biggest thing is that we upgraded to V4. And I can't go over all the V changes, but V4 was actually a small change itself. It didn't have a lot of breaking changes, so there's not a lot to worry about there. But it is a big thing that does change.
I got a little side tip. So we were trying to release SvelteKit mid-December, and it was going to conflict with the V4 release. So the V core team and the SvelteKit core team kind of overlap a little bit, and there's a lot of communication between them. And so we were able to get them to pull their release back, and then we were able to launch with V4 in SvelteKit. So it was like a lot of stuff that happened there.
Yeah, I don't know
for everybody.
We also have a V core team member on our team. I don't know if you know Blue Bjorn.
Yeah, Blue is on the Svelte, and
yes, that's right. I forgot that he does work on Svelte as well. So yeah, Blue works with us too, and so yeah, he's like
Blue is kind of everywhere.
He's really brilliant. He's really great at like tracking down like weird issues and stuff. But anyways, he works for us, and so yeah, he's very invaluable. Anytime there's like something weird going on with V, he figures it out. Anyways, so yeah, V4. We dropped support for Node 14. Node 14, like LTS, I think expires in March, so we thought it was a good time to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Like we reserve the source content folder name, so if you happen to have that folder, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Mostly small things. This looks like a long list, but that's just because our docs team is like very thorough. Most of these things are so tiny, and you're probably not using them. There's a bunch of like legacy APIs that this is like Astro 0.26. We finally removed it. And then the other thing that's actually kind of nice, this is a breaking change technically, but when we do a build, let's see if we can do that real quick.
Sarah's your docs team person.
Yes.
She's the lead.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Sarah's the lead. We have like so many people that contribute, particularly our international team is like so amazing. Like anytime I know like we were making some like last minute changes before 2.0 release, and Docs is very quick, but all the translations were updated so quick. I mean,
amazing. How
really
big is
great
that
thing.
whole Astro team in general now?
It's hard for me to say because we have some people work as contract. Like Sarah's full time,
Gotcha.
but she is technically a contractor. I don't know, maybe like 11 people that are
Okay, so still
full-time-ish.
fairly small. Yeah.
Yeah, fairly small, but we have like a couple full-time designers and stuff, so we're building out.
Awesome.
Anyways, yeah. So one point I want to make here is that we now output to this _Astro file, and
Okay.
so like any of your JavaScript or CSS gets put here, and this is really nice because we're going to work with different hosting providers like Vercel and Netlify, and we can actually tell them now for this _Astro file that can be cached forever. And so that basically just speeds up your website because the web browser never even needs to check to see if those files have changed, because they'll never change because they're
Doing a lot
hashed.
of those optimizations under the hood for you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyways, that's technically a breaking change, but more than likely you don't need to know. You don't really care. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Svelte IDE support.
Oh no, where do you see that?
It's almost halfway through, a little below halfway through the list on the right.
Oh yeah, what is that? Oh, see, this is something Blue did. I don't know what he did here, but yeah, it requires a Svelte config. Oh yes, if you're using the Svelte integration, then you also need to have a Svelte config file.
Because that's a Svelte requirement because of the Vite preprocess, because it's a Vite template and it probably just needs it for that library, that Vite preprocess.
Sure. Yeah.
To compile the Svelte.
I guess I'm not really. This is definitely something.
I see Svelte and I jump on it. This was an awesome overview. This is actually really exciting for me. I just started a new position at ProV running the design system. Oh, yeah. And so I'm like looking at like docs changes we could make and like thinking about rebuilding the doc site. I like this.
Yeah, I mean they do a really great job for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think unless I missed anything, did we cover all of the 2.0 changes and like a little basics about Astro?
Yeah, I think we pretty much got it. I mean, yeah, not really sure what else really to say. Astro 2, like we just released it. We're like we've gotten a flood of new users, which is amazing. So
that's awesome.
We're a little behind in our issues just because there've been so many of them, but not in a bad way. A lot of issues are just misunderstandings and stuff. But we're
oh, sorry. I didn't mean to do that yet. Every time that you release something new, you're going to get new users. And with new users comes new like issues and information that needs to get out in the world.
Yeah, there's always like things that, experienced users know, but new users don't necessarily recognize. And that's actually an opportunity to be like, oh, hey, we need to document this better. Because this is a behavior that people don't just, intuit. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. But anyway,
that's a great mindset too.
Yeah, we've been releasing a lot of patches. I think we're up to like Astro 2.05 already or something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, we're still in the process of really making sure the 2.0 release is in a really stable place. And then we're going to start looking at new features, on 2.0, 2.1, but we'll see what that is.
Well, amazing. And I think like 6 months down the road, I would love to have you or someone else back on and see like where Astro's going. This was such an informative demo and watching you walk through all that. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I think with that, we'll transition over to perfect picks, which is what my screen went up there for. So we have been talking about content collections, and I wanted to share the post that was written about content collection. It goes more into Zod and the type-safe markdown, how all of that works under the hood. Ben Holmes, really good friend. So go and check out that post. It's a great read if you're interested more in how the content collections work. And then Matthew picked a TV show for us. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah. Okay. This is Last of Us. I bet a lot of your listeners and viewers already know about this, but I didn't. This is based on a video game that I didn't actually know about. But yeah, it's like it's like a post-apocalyptic kind of zombie, but they're not really zombies kind of thing. It's
Are we
very
talking about like
intense.
The Walking Dead kind of?
It's got some of that vibes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But they're not normal. I don't know if it's spoiling to explain, but they're not normal zombies, I would say.
Okay.
Anyways, the show is like I've watched Walking Dead, and this is like more intense than that. Like
Oh.
you're really on edge, yeah. Or I mean, at least for me.
Yeah, it may
really
be too
interesting.
scary for me, but I definitely have to check it out. I'm really interested in this one. So, yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, and thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you walking through all of that. I'd love to hear more, and excited for where Astro's going and the progress that the team has made with such a small team is just incredible.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see y'all next time.